afternoon. My name is Rebecca Perfect and I'm the Communications Officer, as Debbie said, for the Pension Fund. Thank you for saying I had broad shoulders. Sometimes I don't feel like it, but I am the person who generally sends out all the emails, or the spam as we call them, in the office, so hopefully I don't bother you too much, or I don't go in a folder that you don't ever read. I'm going to be talking to you for the next half an hour, and then you can all escape, about discretions policies. If John was still here, I would thank him quite nicely for the link that he gave me this morning. A bit of a scary slide, talking about the pension Ombudsman, but it is a recent case, where basically if you don't have a discretions policy that you have to have, what can actually go wrong. So it's not nice to think about what can go wrong, but it is a good example of if you don't have a policy in place, what exactly can happen. Okay, so you've heard all this morning really that the local government pension scheme is a statutory scheme, so its rules and regulations are set down in Parliament by the DCLG. And so it is a statutory scheme, so why is there a discretion? So it basically means that you have, as employers, some decisions to make. Basically it means that there is some framework within, there's a framework within the regulations which still allows for local decisions. So you as an employer are making decisions all the time to do with the local government pension scheme and your employees. So when someone starts work, you look at their contract, if they've got a contract that allows them access to the scheme, so and you bring them in, you look at their rate of pay, as what Trevor's been talking about, and then you band them according to their rate of pay. So there's lots of decisions that you're making all the time from when you first bring someone into the LGPS. There's, as the regulations change, as again you've heard all throughout this morning really, more regulations that we get, the more complicated the scheme gets. Doesn't mean we can forget what's happened in the past, so it means that we just have more flexibilities, and each time you have a discretion to make, it's under a certain set of regulations. And with anything really, any decisions that you make to agree to pay benefits early or pay extra benefits, they likely to cause you costs. So that's why there is a discretion, so the member can't just make these decisions without your authority, because at the end of the day it is going to cause you costs as the employer. So I'm breaking all the rules here. This is not what a PowerPoint presentation slide should look like. It's far too wordy. It is just there to give you an example. It is an exact extract from the Local Government Pension Scheme Regulations 2013. So this is Regulation 16, Additional Pension Contributions. The main bit there is in red. And so this is how obviously the regulations are written. They're very technical, very wordy. But the two bits in red there are for you to highlight, or I'm trying to highlight to you where the discretion comes about from, basically where your discretion comes from. The first sentence in red is actually a discretion that the admin authority has. So Shropshire Council, as the admin authority, we have discretions as well as you guys as the employers. So the first sentence there, unless the appropriate admin authority determines, that creates a discretion. And then the last sentence there in red, may be funded in whole or in part by the member's scheme employer. That creates a discretion. So this is why we end up with this big long list. Don't worry, I'm not expecting you to go through all the regulations and highlight everywhere where it says that the employer may or the scheme administering authority may. There's this document, and this is the first of two documents which hopefully if you go away today knowing anything more about discretions, you'll know about these two documents. So this is a document which is available on this website here, LGPS Regs, and it should be your first stop really, your Bible in terms of what decisions you have as an employer in the LGPS. It doesn't matter what type of employer you are, so it's important to know that whether you're a town and parish council, whether you're a main local authority council, you all have to have a discretions policy according to the regulations. Every single discretion listed in the regulation, listed in the regulations and the previous regulations, so under the 2008, 1997 regulations, are all listed in this document. It's quite a clear document, and it lists the discretion on the left-hand side. the regulation number, so if you want to look it up in the regulation. But then it also says who it's exercised by. So I think I was sat with one of the employers in the room a couple of weeks ago, wasn't it? And I just said simply, you would get this document in the first instance, you go through and highlight every single bit that said employer, then you know what decisions you have to make. Anywhere asterisks, you see an asterisk by the middle column that says regulation, that's a compulsory discretion. So you'd be highlighting those extra thick, the big circle by them, because those are the ones that you have to have according to the regulations. So, just a guess. How many do you think there are in that document? Sorry, there's no prizes or anything, so you might not feel like. Okay, any suggestions? Leah, you can't say because you know. Okay. There's 107 discretions in the regulations. You don't have to have a policy for them all. As I said, some of them are compulsory, some of them are voluntary. But what I want you to think about is that document I've just shown of all the ones that you potentially could have. So they are split. 35 of the 107 are for active, so current active members and leavers from the 1st of April 2014, so since the new regulations have come in. And then if you've had anyone leave and you're an employer in the scheme, participating in the scheme during these periods, between the 1st of April 08 and the 31st of March 14, you have 17 discretions according to the regulations for that period. Anyone who left between the 1st of April 98 and the 31st of March 2008, and this also is for councillors in the scheme, there's 17 discretions. And 2 discretions for any leavers before the 1st of April 1998. I think a common misconception is that as new regulations come in, the old ones go away, and we've only got these new sets of this particular set of discretions. You still have to think about if you were ever asked a question by one of your former employees who've still got obviously pension benefits, i.e. can they get access, can they have access to them early, you still need to retain those discretion policies. There are also discussions within the LGPS framework regarding compensation and injury payments, mainly around redundancies, but these are optional. Okay. So discretionary functions. It actually states in the regulations, employers are required to formulate, publish and keep under review a policy statement in relation to the exercise of a number of discretions. So, meaning that within that 107, some of those are compulsory and you have to make a policy, keep under review that policy and also publish that policy. As the slide states, once published, you must keep it under review. Don't just think, I've made it now, I can just pop it to the side and forget all about it. Keep the statement underneath, keep this statement under review, and if you do review it, you have to share your revised policy with the rest of the fund or with your employees within 1 month of making any revisions. Quite an important note here, in preparing your policy, and again this is stated in the regulations, you should have a regard to the extent of which the exercise of the functions could lead to a serious loss of confidence in the public service. Ultimately, by making a policy, and the policy that you make could have financial implications on you as an employer. And it's obviously if you're an employer with public money, you can't have a policy which says, yes, that's fine, we'll give everyone extra annual pension and it will be fantastic. So yeah, it's a policy, it's there in order to, you have to make a policy which takes in consideration that it does have financial costs attached to it. Potentially good, sorry. So, which ones must have a written policy? If there's employers in the room, and for anyone that I've spoken to, this will be a duplication of this, but I would, as advice, stick to the ones that you have to have a policy on as a minimum requirement. But please look at other policies as part of that document which you could have. By not having a policy, as John said this morning, you're putting yourself more at risk by thinking, oh no, I'm a bit scared of making this policy, I'm a bit scared of going to my board or trustees about making this. A common conversation I have is with town and parish clerks. don't know if there's any in the room, that normally you're the only person who's in the scheme. So you're having to write the policy kind of at the moment for yourself and then take it to the board. So hopefully by having a template, I'll discuss that in a minute, that can help you in your discussions with your committee. So as a minimum, after today, hopefully you can all make them as part, you can make your discussions policy on the compulsory ones. So the 4 areas under the LGPS 2013 regs, so which came in on the 1st of April, there's 4 key areas which you must have a discretions policy on. They are award of additional pension, switching on the 85-year rule, flexible retirement, and waiving actuarial reductions. All of these fit, the majority of them fit round questions that you could be asked by any members of your staff who are in the LGPS. So if you think about it, if you have someone come to you and say, please can I go on flexible retirement, I'm over 55, I know I can do that underneath the regulations, but I need your permission to do so. You wouldn't just put your finger in the air and go, oh, I'm not sure whether I would allow you to do that. First things first, you pull out your policy, and what does our policy say? So in that way, your policy has to be workable, it has to fit your organisation, it has to be user-friendly, it has to be in plain English, and deal with situations as they arise, really. So that's the 4 main areas, but please don't forget the ones that I mentioned, that you'll still have, for a lot of you in the room, people who have already left and are still covered under those dates. They are covered in the template, but I'll show you those in a minute. So, as a minimum, stick to the discretions that you have to have according to the regulations. But please consider, have a look through that document, consider some of the other ones, which are kind of pensions questions that you get asked frequently. So, such as treasury contribution ban throughout the year. So, do you ever have a question asked? I know we do. Or what happens if I work lots of overtime and it bumps me up into the next contribution band? Do you have a rebanding policy? That can form part of your discussions policy. And transfer requests over 12 months. What do you say to people if they phone up your HR department and say, oh, I didn't realise I could make a transfer into the scheme. I did get a scheme guide, but I didn't read it. What can I transfer in that Tesco pension that I've got? What do you say? Do you say that right? No? Or do you say, oh, we've got a policy on that? So that's one of those 2. I put those in there because we get asked those 2 things quite a lot. So it may be worth considering putting those as part of your policy alongside the discussions which are compulsory. So let's go. I'm going to cover the 4 main areas. The 4 main areas of the 2013 scheme regulations, which require a policy. So the first one is award of additional pension. So it's covered under Regulation 31, and the discretion is listed in the regulation is whether to grant extra additional pension of up to £6,675 to the member. So that's the figure as of this year. It does change every year. Since the introduction of the new scheme, and prior to that, you as employers have always been able to award members different benefits, just albeit under via different ways. So you used to be able to award compensatory added years, or you used to be able to augment someone's service, or previously prior to the scheme changing, in the last set of changes, you could award ARCs, additional regular contributions. So now we've got the situation where it's APCs. I'm taking over travel with all my acronyms, but we now award APCs. So you could think as an employer, well, that's going to cost me money. Why would I want to do that? There's quite a few reasons you may want to do that, and I'll just cover that in the next slide. But you can do it to an active scheme member and or someone who's left within 6 months if they've left under redundancy or business efficiency. It's a one-off payment, so it's a one-off cost paid by yourself as employers. There is a calculator on LGPS regs for you to work out how much it does cost. If you want to award someone £6,675 worth of extra pension, it's not going to cost that, it's going to cost significantly more. So you can work out the cost of that. And when you award, if you do an award an employee some extra pension, is then payable from MPA, or if it is paid earlier, that member does get a reduction to their pension benefits. So, another part of APC, so award of additional pension, is Regulation 16, is whereby the member puts their hand up and says, oh, I've got a bit of extra cash, I'd like to make some contributions to increase my pension benefits. So the member can pay towards making an APC, and you as the employer can fund part of that through a shared cost APC. So there's kind of two strands to this area on the discussions. So anyone who's in probably finance in the room will go, why would on earth would we want to do that? That's going to cost us money. There's a few reasons. So to aid recruitment does happen. So in order to attract certain employees, you might want to put that as part of a recruitment package. To aid retention, the opposite way, you don't want someone to go, so you award them additional benefits. Or to compensate or reward at retirement as part of a redundancy package and things like that. It's not, so awarding someone additional pension is not to be confused with shared cost APCs, where a member elects to cover a period of lost pension. So when a member goes on a period of authorised unpaid leave, such as maternity leave, and they don't receive any pension, they don't receive any pay, they can pay shared cost APC, provided they elect within 30 days of returning. They can pay shared cost APCs to cover the period of lost pension for that time. You, as an employer, don't have any discretion on not to do that. So that's not a discretion, that's part of the regulations. By having a discussion which says, no, I'm not going to have shared cost APCs, and I'll talk a little in a minute about fettering, is, say for instance you have a member of staff comes back from maternity, you haven't told them in any of your correspondence to them any kind of information that they have the opportunity to purchase back the period of lost pension, and they come back within 30 days, over the 30 days, and they come and say to you, oh, well, you didn't tell me that I could pay back my lost pension, and I've read in the scheme booklet, in the pension scheme booklet, that you can, if I'd elected to do this within 30 days, it would be a shared cost APC. If you have a discretionary policy in the first instance that says we do not at all, would never make shared cost APCs, you're restricting yourself in the circumstances when actually you may need to use it because you haven't fully informed your member of staff that they can do it. So that's additional pension contributions and shared cost APCs. So moving on to the second area is switching on the 85-year rule. This sounds very switch on the 85-year rule, but this is the kind of second area of your discretions policy in the 2013 scheme. So what the discretion is, and it fits under the transitional protections under the regulations, so it helps members who are obviously in the period of transition going from one scheme to another. So your discretion as an employer is whether to agree to apply the 85-year rule for members choosing to voluntarily retire between the ages of 55 and 59. So under the 2008 regulations, so before the scheme changed, anyone who wanted to go before the age of 60 required their employer's consent. Since the scheme changed on the 1st of April 2014, a member now can retire voluntarily from age 55. That's fine, they don't need your permission, and they can hand in a notice and receive their pension benefits, albeit with a reduction for MPA. However, if they meet the 85-year rule protections, that 85-year rule won't automatically kick in. So what they can do is come to you as their employer and say, I know I'm 56, now I can go automatically, but if I go now, my 85-year rule protections won't kick in, so please, can you, as my employer, switch on the 85-year rule for me so I don't get, so those protections that I am entitled to, that as the scheme says I can have, can come on. So that's your discretion, basically. The 85-year rule is satisfied, so it only affects a certain type of member if they were a member on the 30th of September 2006, and that at that time, at the member's age, when they draw their benefits and their service adds up to 85 or more. So you'll be getting people with quite a lot of service, 55 plus, asking me to switch this on. So obviously by switching on the 85-year rule, what you're doing is allowing that person to have access to their benefits, which won't have a reduction applied to them. Obviously that comes with a cost to you. So you're meeting the strain cost from the fund, which is basically there to compensate the fund for paying out these benefits earlier and then also for longer. So the cost for this does vary and depends on really that particular member, how much service that they've got and how old they are. So if you've got, obviously, hopefully you've got your policy in place, then you have a member ask you for this and you are considering switching it on, please ask us for a quotation and we can provide you with what the strain cost would be. If you don't switch on the 85-year rule, you can say, if you don't decide to go ahead with that, what you can do is meet the member would then face a reduction to their benefits, but you can then waiver the reduction in certain circumstances. Again, you would need to ask us for further options about this as well. Okay. The third area is flexible retirement. So that you might get this a bit more commonly asked than the first two areas. Flexible retirement is under Regulation 30, and flexible retirement is whether to permit flexible retirement for staff aged over 55 who reduce their working hours or grade. So it is hours or grade, and it has to be a member of staff who is over the age of 55, and in order for them to flexibly retire, they need your permission, and they have to reduce either their hours or grade. There's nothing stated in the regulations by how much. So again, this is maybe a consideration for your policy, if you want it to be in there, of a minimum requirement that someone has to reduce their hours or grade by, obviously because by paying someone's pension early, again, comes with costs, so you may want to build that into your policy, and that there has to be a minimum level of reduction to grade or hours. So that's your first decision, whether you allow someone to go, but then part of that discretion, you have some other decisions to make, or other discretions, should I say. You can decide whether to pay someone's benefit, or you have to pay someone's benefit, should I say, they've accrued prior to the 1st of April 2008, and you can pay all, part or none of the benefits that they've accrued after the 31st of March 2008 up until 2014, and then from 2014 onwards again you can decide to pay all, part or none. You can again pay them full with no reduction, or you can waiver that. So you can waiver the reduction, so you pay those benefits in full, or you can have the member face a reduction to their benefits as well. So there's quite a few decisions in your with your decisions that you have. Just note, with the two options that you have to waiver all, part or none for those two sets of service, if you did want to waiver part, we don't have particular guidance on how that would actually work in practice. So we'd have to seek some additional, seek some guidance about that, and that may come with a cost. So again, if you have that question asked and you're considering doing that, please speak to us. The fourth area is kind of touched on a little bit in the three other areas of discretions, but this is kind of by itself. It's waiving actuarial reductions. So again, this is just someone, so a member choose to voluntarily draw their benefits on or after age 55, but before NPA, and whether you would agree as their employer to waiver in whole or in part any reduction that would apply to their benefits. Remember, this might form for, so this will form for active members who are over the age of 55, and they might want to go, you might want them to go, I don't know, and you may think, okay, well, we'll waiver the reduction, that means they can afford to go. This also applies to people who are deferred members, and so they've left after the 1st of April 14, and they're asking you to waiver the reductions that would otherwise be applicable to their pension benefits. And also, if you've got any suspended Tier 3 ill health pensioners, they can ask you under this regulation as well. Again, this comes with what you can waiver and what level of, if you waiver part reduction for someone, it depends on a member's service, so please come to us if you're looking at this for someone. So before I kind of go into the template and how you use the template if you don't have a policy made already, I just wanted to have talk to you about a slide on fettering. So if you're not aware, to fetter something, you constrain yourself, you restrict or prevent it. So it's not good practice, and it can be deemed as unlawful to have a discretion which would just have a policy which would just fetter your discretion by basically saying we would never do it, end of, kind of thing, in a roundabout way. So you can't have a policy, you can't simply adopt a policy to say that you'd never do something. Going back to my earlier point, you wouldn't want to constrain yourself in that way in terms of shared cost APCs, because if you've done something and it can be demonstrated that you haven't done something correctly, you may actually need that discretion in order to be able to do something to rectify that mistake, such as shared cost APCs. Another thing, away from fettering, so some people want to go complete the fettering route, go, no, we'd never do that, or other people want to set out a criteria. So particularly for additional pension contributions, the maximum is 6,775, but you may want a policy which says we'd only ever award a maximum of 3,000. May be right for you, but again, you could be fettering your discretion there because you're really restricting yourself for someone who potentially that you want to pay out more, or someone who is wanting a little bit less than that, but thinks, oh, okay, well their policy is 3,000. But again, you'll be tied to that one. So there's two different thought trains there in terms of making your policy. So, pension ombudsman, I'm going to say that word. You've heard John talking about it this morning, and these are just some little bit of guidance, and the bits of importance really I've underlined and put in bold. When it does go to them, obviously they look at everything that's happened from the point of that member asking you and whether you've got a policy in place. So their guidance I would really stick to. So the first thing they say that the regulations allow an employer to exercise their discretion, and it should be in place to set out how you would exercise that discretion. So think practically, if you have a question asked from a member of staff, how would you deal with that question? So your policy should be there to go, oh, okay, we've had a flexible return request from so-and-so, so let's look in our policy, or you give that policy, it should be readable and a published policy, so your staff should be able to read it and they should understand what your policy is. So second point, it should be a guide to whoever is your decision maker at your organisation. It could be a HR committee or whatever. As I said in the previous slide, your policy shouldn't fetter itself, so it can't bind itself. How will it exercise discretion either way, really? So just trying to think about how you're actually going to word your policy. And also, it should outline what merits you would base your decision on if you ever did get asked to make a decision under your discretionary policy. And lastly, policies are there to assist in your decision making, but they shouldn't override the legislation. So you can't award £10,000 worth of additional pension. That can't be your policy because it's not part of the regulations. So, probably a lot of you, when I emailed out probably end of August, maybe beginning of September, this massive document, and I have had a few comments, this 77-page document, it was meant to, I thought I was going to get all these emails back saying, oh, thanks for this, it's been great. I've got loads of emails back saying, oh my God, it's 77 pages. Thankfully, Debbie agreed to buy this template, so it's not something that I've written, or Debbie, or anyone in Shropshire. We've purchased this template from a company called Pentag, but they it's owned by two people who work at the LGA, so they've written this alongside the guidance. So we've bought it to assist you as our employers in making your policy. The feedback we've been having over the past couple of months is that people, our employers, you guys have been worried, scared, nervous about making this what seems like a really legal, technical document. So when Debbie said, yes, we can buy this template, I thought, great, this is exactly what our employers need. And then I got loads of response back going, oh my God, it's 77 pages. So I'm going to spend a couple of minutes just going through the template and how you can use it if you haven't made a policy yet. So, as I said, this is the document. And if you've been into it and only gone to this page and gone, oh my God, it's 77 pages, then that's probably why you're a bit scared of it. So let's go through it. So the way this has been set up is that anything in red, you can simply go in and put your employer details in. So it's a document which you can literally extract, use it, and this can be your policy document. The first 8 or 9 pages actually forms part of what you could use as a report. So if you have to take your policy to a board of your HR committee or something like that, you can actually use the first part to form part of your report, which can help quite small organisations. Going back to the example of if you're the only person in the scheme and you're having to do this, it can seem quite a bit of a challenge to maybe go to your pension, your committee to say, oh, I've just invented this policy which will influence basically their decision making. So what this first couple of pages means is that you can take this report and say, we've used a template which has been basically supplied by the pension fund, so it means that you can put the right information in there. So you simply, and this may seem daft, but I've talked through film on the Harry Potter theme. You can simply go through and put in your employer name there. I would maybe turn it back black so it doesn't look like it. So go through and start personalising it. Once you start having a read through, so the first couple of pages are really all the introductory stuff, why you're making these discretions. So again, it forms part of that introductory stuff. So the first bit, all this bit here is saying why you're making these, because they're based under all these regulations. Anything in blue is a note, and it's worth reading these because it actually instructs you to delete things out if they're not relevant for to you. So first note there, if it is an admission body, II can be deleted, and also if you don't want your policy to be made around compensation payments and injury allowances, you can simply just go through and quite nicely delete that out. So then your policy's forming, you've started doing it already. Second page, background, so you can put in a date there, today's date, and then simply name of committee or relevant decision maker. You can put in whatever committee you're taking this to. So your policy is forming, your report is forming. There's lots of notes there that you'll just have to read just to make sure if that doesn't apply to you, if you're not choosing to adopt that compensation part, you just delete those out. And then again, some introductory stuff. Okay. So, and that's kind of up to page 7 is your introductory bit. There's a page on fettering, so it kind of covers what I've just spoke about really of what approach to take. And then this is the bit, from page 9, this is what you want to be looking at. So it starts in Annex 1, excuse me, and then this bit here, between pages 9 and 77, it lists all these discretions that you have under all the regulations, so 2013, 2008, 1997. So you're guided as you go through this template on what discretions you're actually looking at. So table A starts with discretions to be exercised on or after the 1st of April 14 under the new regulations. So you know who you're making this discretion for. Also, this is your policy. So if you're a member of staff who knows nothing about pensions, they'd look at it and go, okay, this is discretion applies to me. I'm still an active scheme member and I'm in the scheme now. And then there's also a note that the first 5 items, so up to page 29, are the ones that you have to have a discretion on. So if you're really worried about this, I would just concentrate on pages 9 to 29 and then look at the other stuff afterwards. So this is the discretion here, so it's the one I spoke about earlier. whether at full cost to Hogwarts Academy, to grant extra additional pension of 6675 to an active scheme member or within 6 months of leaving to a member who is dismissed by reasons of redundancy. That is your discretion there. There's lots of notes here for then you to have a think about and read and how actually it would work if you did want to implement this discretion. And then the beauty about this template is it gives you 4 options, sometimes 5. It gives you 4 options for you then to choose. You don't need to even write out any additional wording if you're happy to use this wording. So again, you put in your... And then option 1 is generally carry forward the employer's existing policy. If you don't have a policy or current policy, you obviously won't be able to use that. Option 2, because this is a document which is meant to help employers make their policy and make a good policy in that, option 2 is always gives you the option to, is whether you would fetter your discretion. So option 2 is you put your employer there, will not make use of discretion to grant additional actual pension. So that is what I was saying before, that if you chose that option, you'd be fettering. But the beauty about this template is that it actually gives you an option to say this may be open to challenge or complaint. So when you're actually considering having a chat with your colleagues about this or taking this to a committee, you can actually say, well, I haven't picked option 2 because obviously as the template clearly says this could be fettering our discretion. Option 3, again talking about additional pension contributions, it says generally, so the name of your employer there, would not make the use of the discretion except if it can say, when you put your name of your employer there, considers it as in financial or operational interest to do so, and to do so in each case will be considered on the merits of the financial or operational business case put forward. Okay? So you think, okay, that actually, I quite like that word, and every time we would get a request, we'd look at the financial impact. There is a bit of a note there, so you pick that one. Or if you wanted to be a bit more specific, so you heard me talk before about putting actual details in your option. So option 4 is a similar option, so you generally say no unless you had a financial interest, but you'd have a certain limit. So that's why this template is really good, because it doesn't just say this is just your one option. It gives you kind of 4 options to pick from, and also discuss with your colleagues back at your organisations on what approach that you'd like to take. I'm not going to go through all 77 pages, but if you take that premises for all of those pages, you will have, I'm not saying, when John said an hour, I thought he was being a bit optimistic, but it really won't take you long at all, because as you can see, it's just a matter of taking bits out which aren't relevant to you. I would, if I was you and making your policy, take out some of these notes. You may want to keep in some notes because it should be a working, published document. So if a member of your staff was using it, reading it, you don't want any notes there which say employers should consider. So it should be really clear, easy to read for members, for your employees to understand exactly what your policy is. So then the first page, until page 29, you get to the compulsory discussions, you get from the compulsory discussions. From that point forward, then you get on the ones that are voluntary. That I know that can be quite tricky to try and get over, but does that help with using that template? Because I've actually been on the phone to someone, a couple of people saying, right, are you on page 9? Go to this, because it's a huge document, and because we've paid for it, and if you haven't got a policy, I can't see any reason why you wouldn't want to use this, because it's there, all the terminology is there for you to use, and so there isn't any reason now why you shouldn't have a discretions policy in place. Okay, so my last couple of slides. So, as I just said, use the template. Unless you really have got something already in place and you're happy with it, please use that template. It's there for you to use. Don't be put off by the 77 pages. Hopefully by me breaking it down there, take it page by page, discretion by discretion. It is quite clear when you start reading it and go, oh, actually that doesn't apply, delete that out. Make a copy of it first maybe before you start deleting stuff out. Only look at your compulsory discretions. As a minimum, do those. look at the discussions that you've got from your existing members, from your former members of staff, that you still hold pension benefits for. Also, if you do add or decide to go from your own way with your discussion, just remember, keep it plain English, keep it simple, keep it that if a non-pensions person picked it up, it would be really easy to understand. Also, keep it under review. Don't just make it, leave it, and then think, oh, in 5 years' time, is that still relevant for us? We have published all of the discretions policies that you guys have sent to us on our website now. The reason why we've decided to do that is that if we have a member of your organisation on the phone, and so we did have copies of them, so we thought we'll put them on our website. They're meant to be a published document. We can then quite easily guide your members of staff, say, oh, actually, if they've made a policy, it will be on our website, so they can clearly understand what your policy is on flexible retirement. So what I would say, if you're deciding not to use the template and you plagiarise someone else's template, perhaps, make sure that template's right for you as an organisation. So particularly smaller organisations may want to use the local authorities if they've made their own, so their main local authority. But just remember, what may be right for a main local authority in terms of budget and staff and things like that may not be right for you as maybe a small school or things like that. Okay? Any questions? Because I know I've had a lot of emails and phone calls about discussions policy, so that's why we've put it on the agenda today, and so I've gone through it quite quickly. Is there any questions about it?